You want to live 100 years? Eat tomatoes. They lower blood pressure, cholesterol, and reduce the risk of thrombosis. It also reduces the chance of cancer and cardiovascular disease and makes your skin look healthier and younger. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to 16 scientific rules for using tomatoes based on 40 studies that will really help make tomatoes a real medicine for longevity. Today, we're going to look at the benefits that can come from regular consumption of tomatoes and the products that are made from them. We'll also look at combinations of tomatoes with other foods for longevity. I promise you'll be surprised. Try eating tomatoes this way for a week, and you will see a real miracle. This video will be extremely informative and helpful, so if you want to become a master of your health, click like, and let's get started. In order for tomatoes to truly become your medicine, it is important that your body absorbs enough of these beneficial substances. To do this, firstly, you need to choose tomatoes correctly. For some diseases, ripe; for others, green. And secondly, it is necessary to properly process tomatoes or choose products made from them taking into account all their beneficial properties. Scientists have also found out that the joint consumption of tomatoes with certain foods can significantly improve the absorption of these nutrients and, accordingly, their usefulness. We all realize that various methods are used to grow tomatoes today, and it is important to choose products that retain all the beneficial properties of tomatoes. Tomatoes often fall victim to fungal diseases, so it is important to choose products that are as safe as possible and retain all of their beneficial properties. Some foods may contain a lot of toxins, while others may not contain any at all. Let's start with how common, unscientific consumption of tomatoes is often beneficial. In the 1830s, regular ketchup was sold in drugstores as medicine. Yes, the very same ketchup that many people consider to be a product that is completely useless. Even then, 200 years ago, people knew about the useful properties of tomatoes from their own experience. Science has now systematized and generalized this experience, confirming it. Studies have shown that the consumption of raw tomatoes in the amount of 50 or 60 grams per day, as well as natural ketchup in the amount of about 5 grams per day, already significantly reduces the risks of death from various diseases, including cancer and cardiovascular disease. For example, a qualitative scientific study conducted over 8 years and including 155,000 participants found that eating tomatoes or ketchup reduced the risks of death by 10% and reduced the risks of cancer and cardiovascular disease by 15%. Science has uncovered several mechanisms by which beneficial substances from tomatoes reduce blood cholesterol levels and lower blood pressure. A meta-analysis combining the results of 6 scientific studies found that eating tomatoes or drinking tomato juice not only lowers bad and total cholesterol, but also increases good cholesterol. This has a direct effect on blood pressure. One study showed that people with type 2 diabetes who consumed 200 grams of raw tomatoes for 2 months had improved blood cholesterol parameters and lower blood pressure. Another multi-year study found that eating 45 to 110 grams of tomatoes daily reduced the risk of hypertension by a third. Science has also revealed that 2 different substances in tomatoes lower cholesterol and improve endothelial health, an important part of our blood vessels. Eating tomatoes regularly can significantly improve your health, reducing the risks of various diseases and prolonging your life. The condition of our blood vessels and arteries, their ability to regulate pressure by constricting and dilating when necessary, and the adhesion of blood cells to the vessel walls depend on the condition of the endothelium. Improving endothelial health lowers blood pressure and reduces the risks of blood clots. Scientists have discovered that for blood clots to form, red and other blood cells need to start sticking to the endothelium of blood vessels. This happens when the integrity and condition of the endothelium is compromised. It is not the normal cholesterol that we eat with food and that our liver produces, but oxidized cholesterol that disrupts the endothelium. It is formed in our blood and comes from certain foods. If we reduce the amount of oxidized cholesterol in the blood, we will improve vascular health, lower blood pressure, and reduce the risk of blood clots. The third type of beneficial substances contained in tomatoes prevents the oxidation of cholesterol inside the body. If it is possible to increase the amount of beneficial substances that we get from tomatoes, their benefits will increase many times over. Ketchup and tomatoes may not be beneficial with all foods, and not every ketchup can be beneficial. We'll talk more about that later. For now, I'm going to talk about how eating tomatoes affects cancer risk. This topic is important because there is a lot of misinformation on the internet that lectins in tomatoes cause cancer. In fact, tomatoes do affect cancer incidence, but in a very different way than some sources claim. In a meta-analysis combining the results of 72 scientific studies, it was proven that eating tomatoes in small amounts, 50 to 100 grams per day, does reduce the risks of lung, stomach, prostate, cervical, breast, oral, pancreatic, rectal, and esophageal cancers. In another study, these amounts of tomatoes were shown to reduce cancer risk by as much as 14%. That's a lot. Based on all of the above, we can conclude that tomatoes do indeed extend life by reducing the incidence of cardiovascular disease and cancer. However, what is the point of living a long life if during that long life you will look old? Tomatoes help, if not completely prevent, then significantly push back the time of wrinkles. The fact is that skin aging is caused not only by improper diet with excessive sugars and saturated fats, but also by exposure to ultraviolet rays, which is called photoaging. Ultraviolet rays damage the skin and wrinkles form on the skin. This can be prevented by protecting your skin from the inside out. The best sunscreen is on your inside if you consume tomato paste. Researchers took a group of volunteers and fed them 55 grams of tomato paste. That's about 3 tablespoons, along with 1 tablespoon of olive oil for 3 months before beach season. It turned out that those who ate the tomato paste had 1.5 times less skin sensitivity to UV rays. This manifested itself in less reddening of the skin when exposed to the same dose of UV light. In another study, consuming 2 tablespoons of tomato paste a day significantly improved the external and internal condition of the skin. The skin was smoother, with fewer pores and redness. One of the active ingredients in tomatoes, most of which is absorbed from tomato paste, increases the skin's innate immunity, reduces water loss through the skin, increases its thickness, and reduces pores and flaking. So, eating about 200 to 300 grams of fresh tomatoes, 200 to 300 milliliters of tomato juice, or 5 to 10 grams of ketchup daily helps to slightly reduce cholesterol, blood pressure, risk of heart disease, and risk of cancer. And about 50 grams of tomato paste, 2 to 3 tablespoons a day, along with 1 tablespoon of olive oil, protects the skin from UV-induced aging and helps to increase its thickness, smoothness, and moisturization. Choosing and processing tomatoes correctly and eating them with the right foods can increase these beneficial effects many times over. Don't rush into buying all the tomatoes you see. First, let's learn the ins and outs of the tomato. There is one small spoiler. Before we get into the rest of the tomato rules, there is a small caution to discuss. The fact is that tomatoes in general are completely safe for everyone except people who suffer from psoriasis. And even for them, it is not a general rule. Scientific studies have shown that in only 6% of people with psoriasis, tomatoes can intensify the course of the disease, worsening the condition. For the other 94% of people with psoriasis, tomatoes can be beneficial. So check it out for yourself to see how tomatoes affect your condition. Even if you have psoriasis, you shouldn't give up on tomatoes right away. Do a little experimentation and see if you really need to avoid this product or if it can improve your health. Most people tend to overestimate their sensitivity to various foods, a scientific study has found. Approximately 25 to 30% of people believe that certain foods have a negative impact on their health, but experiments have shown that this negative impact is actually observed in only 35% of them. So people are overestimating the potential harm of the products they imagine by a factor of 10. This is the basis for our number 2 recommendation. Test the effects on yourself before drawing conclusions. According to studies, in only 6% of people with psoriasis, eating tomatoes worsens their condition. Therefore, most psoriasis patients don't need to eliminate tomatoes from their diet unless there is strong evidence of harm to them. I think I have fulfilled my promise to surprise you with the breadth of the range of health benefits of regular tomatoes, and responsible for that range of health benefits. There are 3 main groups of health benefits in tomatoes that do not include the mineral salts or vitamins that so many people talk about. Other nutritionists, on the contrary, advocate tomatoes, claiming that they contain a huge amount of health benefits. Scientific research has shown that one average tomato, weighing approximately 100 grams, contains only a paltry amount of vitamins and mineral salts. About 2 to 7% of the daily value of potassium, about 7% of magnesium, about 4% of calcium, less than 15% of manganese, less than 3% of iron, and less than 2% of zinc. This means nothing at all in terms of health benefits. The same is true for vitamins. So for vitamin and mineral nutrition, you need to combine tomatoes with other foods, because many of them contain other nutrients that can greatly enhance the absorption of tomatoes' health benefits. That's the kind of weird science of nutritional science. So there are 3 main groups of beneficial substances in tomatoes, each with specific beneficial effects on different aspects of health. So it's important to choose the right tomatoes, not just any tomatoes that are ripe, in order to utilize them properly. In addition, the right tomatoes are not just raw, fresh tomatoes, as raw food advocates claim, but also those that are properly cooked. This expands the possibility of using tomatoes for healing to 365 days a year, but it is important to keep in mind that not all tomato products are healthy. Some of them can be quite harmful as well. Therefore, tomatoes are very useful to eat with those foods that are high in cholesterol. And this is the first of the secrets to safe cholesterol. Green tomatoes contain 5 to 20 times more tomatin than regular red-ripe tomatoes. Large, ripe tomatoes have very little tomatin, a little more than cherry tomatoes, and a little more than regular tomato juice, since it's not just made from fully ripe fruit. If you have high cholesterol, eating green tomatoes is a great way to lower it. However, you'll have to eat more than just green tomatoes. For one thing, tomatoes that ripen on a windowsill contain significantly more tomatin than those ripened on a branch. Virtually all tomatoes sold in stores are ripe. The same is true for most tomatoes on the market, so you can eat ripe tomatoes as well, successfully lowering cholesterol. But for absolutely guaranteed cholesterol reduction, choose green tomatoes, as they have more alpha-tomatine. You can pickle, sour, pickle, and even fry them, as 3/4 of the tomatine remains even in fried tomatoes. Fried tomatoes in breadcrumbs, by the way, are one of the national dishes of many Mediterranean peoples. This is one of the features of the Mediterranean diet, not only tomato paste in pizza, but also green tomatoes. And by the way, if you are interested in the topic of sour tomatoes and any sour vegetables in general, if you want to know how to properly ferment vegetables and how to avoid the appearance of nasty mold on top of sour vegetables, then please put a plus in the comments and write sour vegetables, and I will make such a video. People with high cholesterol should consume green tomatoes. Those without this problem, on the other hand, eating ripe tomatoes is sufficient. However, for people with high cholesterol, it is recommended to combine green tomatoes with ripe tomatoes or tomato products, as they contain other health benefits. Recommendation number 2. In season, you can use heat-treated green tomatoes, for example, lightly roasted. Out of season, it is preferable to eat sour or pickled green tomatoes, and sour tomatoes are healthier. It is enough to eat about 100 grams of green tomatoes a day, which is 1 or 2 medium-sized tomatoes. The second useful substance in tomatoes, or rather, a whole large group of these useful substances, is called polyphenols. People who watch my videos quite often are already familiar with this name. The fact is, that all polyphenols in all plants are very beneficial. Tomato polyphenols just treat or reduce the risks of cancer, thrombosis, improve vascular health, and lower cholesterol a little bit too. It is polyphenols, not vitamins or minerals, that are the healing components of fruits, vegetables, and herbs that I talk about in each of my videos. Tomatoes contain two other extremely beneficial substances in addition to polyphenols. That's why they are so beneficial. Yes, friends, the healthfulness of tomatoes is not only determined by the polyphenols, but also by the amount of them. The tomato is such a steady middle ground in it. It has slightly more polyphenols than a regular onion and slightly less than a regular potato. Even though there aren't many polyphenols in tomatoes, or rather, it is precisely because there aren't many polyphenols in tomatoes that we need to choose tomatoes that contain more polyphenols. The more polyphenols, the more therapeutic our tomatoes are. As it turns out, polyphenols are highest in tomatoes that are organically ripened, much more than in organically grown ones, which tend to be more expensive and tastier. There are fewer polyphenols in tomatoes grown with pesticides in conventionally fertilized fields. So both those who will consume green tomatoes to lower cholesterol and those who will eat only fresh tomatoes, they will still get a significant amount of polyphenols. The availability and absorption of these polyphenols can be greatly enhanced by proper preparation and consumption with the right foods. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's just eulogize the most important beneficial component of tomatoes, lycopene. It is the high amount of lycopene in tomato paste that explains the phenomenally strong beneficial effects on our skin. In addition, lycopene has the strongest effect on the cardiovascular system of all three tomato health benefits. It is actually very good for the heart and reduces cancer risks, blood pressure, and lowers cholesterol a little bit. Oddly enough, it's the lycopene you get from raw tomatoes that is beneficial, because lycopene supplements don't have a tenth of that beneficial effect with the same amount of lycopene. Now back to the beneficial substance that is present in tomatoes. Absolutely without exaggeration, we are talking about a unique substance, lycopene. Indeed, it is amazingly useful. It works only from plant products. Additives do not give even 1/100th of a fraction of that benefit. Lycopene in large quantities is found exclusively and only in tomatoes. In addition, it can also be found in papayas, which you can sometimes buy. I'm even lucky enough to live in a country that grows its own not particularly tasty papayas and in watermelons. But the most lycopene is found in tomatoes, especially ripe tomatoes, as scientific studies have shown. Lycopene and beta-carotene are the second most therapeutic components that help protect the skin and heart. It is in ripe tomatoes that carotene and lycopene are most abundant. Green tomatoes contain a minuscule amount of it, so those who are treated with green tomatoes should definitely consume ripe tomatoes as well. When cholesterol levels rise, not only does the heart suffer, but cancer risks increase and other organs deteriorate, and lycopene can help correct this. However, the amount of lycopene you get from even a ripe tomato depends very much on how you cooked it and what you ate it with. We're moving on to the health benefits of tomatoes. The first most strange and probably unexpected aspect for many people is the question of whether to eat tomatoes with or without skins. The fact is that not only do many culinary traditions require scalding tomatoes and removing that unpalatable skin, but many bloggers, who can be called quacks, claim that it is in the skin of tomatoes that contain extremely dangerous lectins that can lead to cancer. According to them, the skins should be removed. But this opinion is not supported by scientific research. It took the Italians 250 years to start removing the skins. Scientific studies have shown that almost all tomato lectins are contained in tomato juice, i.e., in the entire mass of the fruit, and removing the skin has no effect on the amount of lectins. Tomato lectins are useful and not harmful, which is another aspect of tomatoes' usefulness. Moreover, the lectins of all other nightshades are also beneficial and improve health. Research tells the truth about lectins, and also expresses the opinions of serious scientists about Steve Gundry's book. So friends, back to our tomatoes in their skins. Tomatoes have virtually no lectins in them, so there is no need to skin them. The fact is that those thin skins contain the vast majority of polyphenols and lycopene. Those tomato products cooked with the skins contain 1.5 times more polyphenols and lycopene, a scientific study has found. Friends, even though the skins are not digested inside us and come out with us like stones, it is still good for the body to consume tomatoes with skins. If you're making something like tomato paste or just tomato pulp, these chopped tomatoes should be crushed in a blender with the skins on so that the body can absorb much more lycopene and polyphenols. This is our conclusion number 5. The greatest amount of antioxidants, polyphenols, and carotene are found in the tomato skins. Removing them reduces the amount of these essential nutrients by 1.5 times. Fantasies that tomato lectins are dangerous and are contained in the skin of tomatoes are not true. Among all tomato products, the leader in the content of both lycopene and polyphenols is tomato paste. It contains 3 to 4 times more digestible lycopene and polyphenols than any other product. The point here is not only the concentration, but also the fact that heat treatment increases the availability of polyphenols and lycopene, but destroys their absolute minimum. Therefore, one of the main secrets of tomato consumption is their heat treatment. In this case, even the small amount of vitamins in tomatoes is not at a premium. We are interested in polyphenols and lycopene. It has been shown that when blanching, that is, steaming in a pan at about 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius, the availability of polyphenol content in small tomatoes increases by 1/3 and in large tomatoes by 1/4. Carotene concentration doubles with blanching. The amount of fat significantly increases the absorption of vitamin A, vitamin K1, and vitamin E 3-7 times more than from tomatoes without fat. Therefore, fresh and unprocessed tomatoes are a waste of time. Our conclusion number 6. Blanched tomatoes contain 1/3 more available polyphenols and twice as much available lycopene and beta-carotene than fresh tomatoes. Vegetable oil should be used to blanch tomatoes, about 20-30 grams per 100-150 grams of tomatoes, which increases the absorption of lycopene and beta-carotene by 5 times and vitamins A, E, and K1 by 3 to 7 times. Recommendation number 7. The most useful are not fresh, but blanched tomatoes and tomato paste. Blanched tomatoes can be consumed 100-200 grams per day or even more. 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil, preferably extra virgin olive oil, should be added for every 100-150 grams of tomatoes. Our recommendation number 8. Since the highest amount of digestible polyphenols, lycopene, and beta-carotene are found in tomato paste, it should be consumed with 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. Tomato paste can be added to food or consumed on its own. Mix the tomato paste with the oil and swallow it. Conclusion number 9. It makes the most sense to consume oil blanched tomatoes in season and tomato paste out of season. People with high blood cholesterol can add another 100 grams of green tomatoes, roasted, sour, or pickled, to tomato paste and blanched tomatoes. Now to the question of pesticides. I found an excellent European study that analyzed the amount of pesticides in fresh tomatoes of various varieties and in various tomato products: tomato paste, puree, diced tomatoes, tomato juice, and so on. It turns out that both this and several other studies I've also looked at contain extremely small amounts of pesticides. Most of them degrade to safe substances as the tomatoes ripen. The small amounts of pesticides that are occasionally found in some batches of tomatoes are almost always below dangerous limits. Therefore, simply washing your tomatoes well is sufficient. However, if you prefer to be extra careful, tomato products from juice to tomato pulp to tomato paste do not contain any pesticides at all in certain amounts. As you can see from this table, if the icon is less than an L, it means that the pesticide content is below a certain limit. Therefore, eat safely. We make our finding number 10 that there are no pesticides found in tomato paste and canned crushed tomatoes, and that they are only present in fresh tomatoes in some batches and most often in safe amounts. As for dyes, I won't argue that the information on the internet about many tomato paste and ketchup factories purchasing dangerous dyes by the ton may be true. In some cases, it really is. Friends, I am not arguing that dyes can be harmful because many of them have been linked to causing cancer and causing various unpleasant and harmful mutations in the body. Now let's move on to a discussion of dyes in tomato paste. Coloring tomato paste with dyes is like tinting soot black, because soot itself is a black dye. Lycopene and carotenes, which are extracted from tomato paste, are not only colorants but also antioxidants that protect the products from oxidation and make them more durable. Thus, the use of tomato dyes in products, such as sausage, reduces preservatives and antioxidants, making the product less harmful. As for dyes in ketchup, I won't argue that some manufacturers use dangerous dyes to counterfeit tomato paste and ketchup in Europe, the US, and most of the world. However, in the former Soviet Union, the use of colorants and preservatives in ketchup and tomato paste is legally prohibited, except for some economy-class products where tomato paste substitutes from cheaper pastes may be used. This may require additional coloring with hazardous dyes, which is not always publicized by manufacturers. Therefore, it is important to choose ketchup with a high tomato product content and to purchase the highest quality tomato paste with no substitutes. This reduces the risk of using dangerous colorings. So friends, let's consider our conclusion number 11. If tomato paste is made without substituting cheaper substitutes such as apples, carrots, and starch, then adding coloring agents to it makes no sense. Lycopene itself is an excellent coloring agent, and adding tomato products to other foods for coloring also increases their shelf life. Tomato paste is a safer and more guaranteed product. As for ketchup, it can be consumed, but the quality depends on the country of production. And as for tomato juice, its use has also been discussed in various studies where it prolonged life and reduced the risks of cardiovascular disease and cancer. Is it safe to consume it? Yes, but with caution. Recent studies have shown that tomato juice can sometimes be contaminated with patulin, a dangerous fungal toxin produced by a specific mold that may be present in some plant foods. This is important to consider, especially when it comes to baby food or juice consumption. Using organic apples or organic tomatoes does not guarantee protection from patulin, a toxin released by a specific mold. Organic produce is not treated with fungicides, which increases the risk of developing dangerous fungi. Products made from organic apples and tomatoes often contain significant amounts of patulin. After my video on apple juice, many people asked about the presence of patulin in tomato products. It turns out that patulin is often present, especially in tomato paste. However, there is one secret. Tomatoes contain many beneficial substances that help neutralize patulin quickly. Thus, factory-produced tomato paste usually contains low levels of patulin that are not a health risk. In crushed tomatoes and tomato juice, the patulin content can be significant, especially after several months of storage. Tomato ketchup and puree, on the other hand, contain significantly less patulin, making them safe to consume. Recent studies have confirmed that the patulin content in tomato juice may exceed safe limits. Therefore, you should prefer crushed tomatoes or tomato paste when choosing products. Conventional tomato products are pesticide-free in terms of polyphenols. Organic tomatoes are lower in polyphenols. So organic also does not make sense in terms of patulin content. Organic tomatoes can be harmful because they contain several times more patulin than conventional tomatoes. Therefore, tomato juice and chopped tomatoes, but not tomato paste, may have patulin content above safe limits. It only makes sense to buy organic tomatoes for eating fresh or for cooking with them. Any organic tomato products are equal in useful parameters to conventional tomato products. So buying organic products, although more expensive, does not make sense. The next method of processing tomatoes is souring, whether ripe or green. Sour tomatoes are a very healthy product, as they contain beneficial bacteria that increase the availability of useful substances and reduce the content of harmful batholin and pesticides to almost zero. However, it is recommended to consume sour tomatoes with vegetable oil or other fat-rich foods to assimilate the beneficial substances. It remains to be determined with which foods you should not consume tomatoes, as the substances they contain can bind lycopene, carotenes, and polyphenols, making them less useful. Cucumbers, for example, do not contradict tomatoes and are even beneficial when combined with them, as demonstrated in my video. On the other hand, there are foods that can actually reduce the health benefits of tomatoes, a list of which can be found online. Scientific studies clearly show that red cabbage and eggplant contain anthocyanins, powerful antioxidants that make red cabbage much healthier than regular green cabbage and also give eggplant its special health benefits. However, anthocyanins bind lycopene, which reduces its absorption from tomatoes by 30 to 60%. This doesn't mean you can't eat tomatoes with red cabbage. You can, but if you want to use tomatoes as a functional product to improve your health and not just as a tasty dish, it is better to spread their use with red cabbage or eggplant in time. That way you will get the full benefit of both red cabbage and tomatoes. The next product that you absolutely should not eat with tomatoes is kebabs and steaks. Alas, but as scientific studies have shown, the iron found in these foods and in any foods that have a lot of iron also binds lycopene and carotenoids, and they are simply wasted out of the body. It is clear that eating steaks and kebabs with tomato sauce is good for you, but in this case, do not think that tomato sauce improves your health. If you want to eat kebab or steak, then eat it, but with green tomatoes, because green tomatoes bind the cholesterol that is in red meat and take it out of the body. Red meat will be much less harmful. The next food that is often eaten with tomatoes, especially in a Greek salad, is dairy products. Also for nothing, as scientific studies have shown. Calcium and its relative magnesium, which belong to the same group of divalent alkaline earth metals, also bind lycopene and carotenoids and carry them away from the body. And calcium and magnesium are the most harmful substances for tomatoes because they especially bind up to half of the lycopene that is in tomatoes and render them completely useless. So if you are eating Greek salad, friends, or consuming any other dairy products, cottage cheese or kefir, with tomatoes, just know that you are not getting the health benefits from those tomatoes. You can eat it, but it's better to spread them out over different meals too. This applies, friends, not only to the produce itself, but also to supplements, iron, calcium, and magnesium supplements. If you consume tomatoes, then consume these supplements at other times. Moreover, let me remind you that calcium, iron, and magnesium cannot be used together because they also neutralize each other's action, so they need to be spread out for different times as well. There's another type of supplement that you can't use with tomatoes either. It's any kind of fiber, inulin, psyllium, any bran, any dietary fiber that you use as supplements. Significantly reduces the antioxidant value of tomatoes and their medicinal value because fiber binds up to half of the lycopene, up to 60% of the beta-carotene, and up to 70% of the vitamin E, and carries them away from the body. And the final conclusion, if you want to consume tomatoes not only for taste, but also as a functional product, i.e., to improve your health, it is better not to consume them in one meal with red cabbage, eggplant, dairy products, red meat, as well as with calcium, magnesium, iron, and fiber supplements, psyllium, bran, inulin. All of these additives and substances very significantly reduce the absorption of lycopene from tomatoes. But conclusion number 16, green tomatoes can be eaten with these additives and with these products because the main therapeutic substance in them is tomatin, and it does not bind with these additives. What are your thoughts on this? Do you agree with these statements? If you have any questions, Ask them in the comments. More information on this topic can be found at the links in the description below this video and on our channel.
Subscribe and hit the bell for all notifications. Please like and share this video with your friends. Thanks to our sponsors for their support. I eagerly await your comments and encourage you to watch these useful videos.